I never imagined I would end up here, in this quiet little room in a nursing home, staring out at a garden I don't even care about. My name is Lorraine, and I am 60 years old. 60, can you believe it? They say age is just a number, but the weight of my life feels heavier with each passing day. I was never one to complain, though. I worked hard, loved deeply, and cherished every moment with my son, Michael. He was my world. The day he was born, I felt a love so strong it consumed me entirely. I would have walked through fire for him, crossed oceans, done anything to see him smile. And for 28 years, life was beautiful. Michael was a good boy, smart, kind-hearted, ambitious. I remember his first day at school like it was yesterday. I held his tiny hand in mine, trying not to cry as he walked into that classroom, so full of life and curiosity. I was proud of him every single day. His first bicycle, his first heartbreak, his first job, I never missed a moment. Even when life got hard, we got through it together. I always believed that love and care could shield a child from the world's harshness. But sometimes even the strongest love cannot stop certain things from happening. Michael grew up and eventually, he met Sarah. I adored her at first. How could I not? She was charming, elegant, and seemed to understand him in ways I could never. Their wedding was one of the happiest days of my life. I danced, I laughed, I cried tears of joy. I imagined growing old with them, babysitting their children, sharing family holidays, and watching our love grow together. For a while, it was exactly that, a continuation of happiness. But then things began to change. I noticed small things at first. Michael seemed more irritable, more impatient. Little disagreements started turning into arguments. He would criticize me for being too slow, or too forgetful, or too old-fashioned. I brushed it off, thinking it was stress from work or maybe fatigue. I tried to give him space, tried to respect his independence. I thought as a mother, I must learn to let go. But then, the fights grew harsher, sharper, and more personal. The warmth in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something I didn't recognize: resentment. I remember one night, after a particularly tense dinner, I sat in the living room alone, tears streaming down my face. "Why, Michael?" I whispered to the empty room. "I've given you everything. Why do you hate me now?" But there was no answer, only the echo of my own heartbreak. I didn't know then that this was the beginning of a very long, painful journey, one I could never have imagined. After that night, the distance between Michael and me grew wider, almost invisible yet suffocating. It wasn't just the arguments anymore. It was the coldness in his voice, the way he barely looked at me, as if I had become a stranger in my own home. I kept hoping it was a phase, a storm that would pass. I reminded myself of his childhood laughter, the little boy who used to run to me whenever he was hurt. Maybe that boy still existed somewhere inside him. But day by day, that hope faded. Michael's patience wore thin. He complained about everything: my cooking, my slow walking, the way I insisted on keeping the house tidy. "Mom, why do you even care so much about things like this?" He would snap, "Just let it go." And when I tried to explain, to reason with him, he didn't listen. He just got angrier. It was as if every act of love I had shown him over decades had been erased, like a chalk drawing wiped clean by a cruel hand. Then came the fights over trivial things. One morning he yelled at me for forgetting to pay a bill on time. Another day, he stormed out because I asked him to help carry groceries. I couldn't understand it. I thought we were family. I thought love mattered. But now it seemed my presence alone had become a burden to him. I felt invisible in my own home, my heart breaking quietly every day. And then the final blow came. I remember that morning as if it were yesterday, though my memory feels hazy now. Michael had said he had to run some errands and left in a rush. I thought nothing of it, as I had often done. But when the door closed behind him, I noticed something strange. His car was packed differently, heavier. I didn't realize it then, but that was the day my life changed forever. When he returned, he brought with him papers, official-looking, intimidating. "Mom," he said coldly, "I've arranged a place for you. It's better for everyone this way." My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" I asked, panic rising like a tidal wave. But he didn't answer. Not with warmth, not with the boyish smile I had known all my life. He just kept repeating, "It's better this way." Before I could react, he had called a service to move my things. I remember standing in the living room, watching as strangers packed up the life I had built for us. Every photo, every keepsake, Every memory of love and laughter was being taken away, and through it all, Michael looked at me with that same coldness, as if I had ceased to exist. I felt like my soul was being torn from my body. By the time we arrived here at this nursing home, I was numb. I didn't even protest. What could I say? How could I fight the son I had loved more than life itself? I sat in this unfamiliar room, clutching the small bag of belongings I was allowed to bring, and for the first time in my life I felt completely alone, completely unwanted. My heart ached in a way I could not describe, and I realized something cruel sometimes. The people we love the most can hurt us the deepest. Weeks passed, and with them came silence from my son. At first, he called the nursing home once a week. A quick, shallow conversation where he pretended to care. But soon even those calls stopped. He had the house, he had his freedom, and he had washed his hands of me. That silence told me everything. I needed to know he truly believed I was gone from his life, tucked away and powerless. But silence gave me strength. In those long, quiet hours, I remembered things I had forgotten about myself. I remembered the nights I stayed awake with no money in my purse, figuring out how to stretch a single dollar into dinner. I remembered how I worked double shifts, lifting heavy boxes until my back ached, just so my son could have shoes on his feet. I remembered the woman who never quit, no matter how impossible things seemed. And I realized I was still that woman. The nursing home became my classroom. I studied the people around me. Old Mr. Davis, who once worked in construction, knew how to pick locks with nothing but a bent piece of wire. Quiet Mrs. Alvarez, who had been a secretary, remembered every number she ever saw, door codes, delivery truck plates, staff schedules. People thought they were useless here, forgotten by the world. But I saw an army of untapped knowledge. All they needed was someone to believe in them again. So I began to talk. At mealtimes, I leaned in close and whispered. At night, when the halls were still, I sat with the ones who couldn't sleep and listened. Slowly, a small circle began to form around me. We were the ones who refused to fade away, the ones who knew our lives weren't over just because someone else said so. They looked to me for ideas, for leadership, and I gave it to them. It started small. We tested boundaries, seeing how far we could push without drawing attention. One night, Mr. Davis used a stolen paperclip to open the laundry room door. We slipped inside and discovered old uniforms and forgotten keys. Another time, Mrs. Alvarez memorized the code to the delivery. Entrance, 4 digits that could mean freedom if we use them wisely. Each success fed the fire inside me, and as I gathered strength here, I thought of him, my son, lounging in my living room, his feet on my coffee table, maybe even laughing with friends about how easy it had been to get rid of me. Did he ever think of me at night? Did he picture me lying in bed, broken and forgotten? I almost wished he did, because soon those thoughts would turn into nightmares. I wasn't planning to just return home. No, that would be too easy, too merciful. I was planning to return in a way that would etch itself into his mind forever. I wanted him to wake up every morning in that house and feel me there, not as his sweet old mother, but as the reminder of everything he had done wrong. He thought I was finished. But the truth was, I was only just beginning. The night it all began was cold, the kind that crept into your bones and whispered secrets to your skin. I sat by the window of my room, watching the street lamp outside flicker like a heartbeat. My son was out there somewhere, maybe sleeping soundly in my bed, maybe dreaming without a care. But I was awake, sharper than I had been in years. That was the night I decided my waiting was over. We moved in silence, my little circle of forgotten souls. Mr. Davis with his nimble hands, Mrs. Alvarez with her flawless memory, and a few others who wanted to taste freedom again. We weren't criminals, we were survivors. Every one of us had been discarded by the people we loved most. Every one of us carried wounds too deep for the nurses to see. And together, we became something stronger than anyone expected. Our first step was simple: access. Mrs. Alvarez had already whispered the code to the delivery door. 4921. Mr. Davis had fashioned a hook from a piece of bent metal he found in the workshop. That night, while the staff laughed over coffee in the break room, we slipped out. The cool air hit my face like a baptism, reminding me that I was alive, that I still had choices. But I didn't run, not yet. This wasn't about escape. This was about preparation. We scouted. We moved through the shadows, learning the layout of the town outside, memorizing bus schedules, watching the roads that led back to my house. When we returned to the nursing home before dawn, no one suspected a thing. To the staff, I was still the quiet old woman who rarely spoke. Back in my bed, I lay awake and pictured the house again. My son walking through the kitchen, opening the refrigerator I once filled with his favorite foods. Did he see my hands in the tiles I scrubbed 100 times? Did he feel my presence in the rocking chair where I once held him? His tiny body pressed against my chest? No, he probably didn't, but soon he would. I began sending him little reminders. At first, small things. A phone call late at night where I didn't speak, only breathed into the receiver until he hung up. A letter slipped into his mailbox with no return address. Only 4 words written in my neat handwriting: "You are not alone." I could imagine his face as he read it, the first ripple of doubt crossing his mind. Then I escalated. I asked Mr. Davis to help me create a spare key to the house. I still remembered exactly where. I kept the old one hidden in the garage. With that key, I could come and go when I pleased. The thought thrilled me. My son believed I was locked away, powerless, forgotten. But while he slept in what used to be my room, I would be standing in his doorway, watching. He had taken my home. Soon I would take his peace. The first night I returned to the house, my heart beat louder than my footsteps. The key slid into the lock with a quiet click, and just like that, I was inside. My home, my walls, my air. For a moment I stood in the entryway, closing my eyes and breathing deeply, as though the house itself had been waiting for me. The faint smell of polish, the creak of the familiar floorboards, these were mine. He thought he had claimed them, but they still belonged to me. The living room was different. My son had rearranged the furniture, as though changing the shape of the house could erase the years I had spent in it. The old curtains were gone, the photographs had been taken down. My face, once framed in every corner, was missing. It stung, but it also fueled me. He wanted me erased. So instead I would become inescapable. I didn't wake him that night. No, not yet. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about erosion. Slow and steady like water carving stone. I left the rocking chair slightly swaying, just enough that he might notice it moving when he came into the room. I pulled one of my old teacups from the back of the cupboard and set it neatly on the kitchen counter. Little things too small to prove, but impossible to ignore. The next morning, I heard from one of my allies at the nursing home. My son had called the house's repair company, asking if they'd sent anyone by. He was already uneasy. Good. I returned the following night and left a stronger mark. I pulled out an old family photo he had shoved into a drawer and placed it on his pillow, facing upward. It was a picture of him as a child, his arms wrapped around my neck. I imagined him coming into the bedroom, tired and ready for sleep, only to find that memory staring back at him. Did he remember that day? Did he remember the way I carried him when he was too tired to walk? I hoped it haunted him as much as it haunted me. Over the next week, my visits became routine. A chair out of place, a faucet left dripping, footsteps faintly echoing in the hall while he slept. Once, I even whispered his name from the shadows as he dozed on the couch. He jolted awake, his eyes wide, scanning the empty room. I smiled to myself. He wasn't sleeping so soundly anymore. He began locking the doors, but I had my key. He began leaving lights on, but shadows are patient. He began drinking more, trying to dull the edge of his nerves. But fear doesn't dissolve in alcohol, it festers. Each night, the house grew heavier around him, filled with the weight of my presence. He had wanted me gone, silenced, forgotten. Instead, I was closer than ever, pressing in on him with every creak of the floor, every flicker of the lights, every breath of air. He thought he'd buried me in that nursing home, but now it was he who was beginning to rot, from the inside out. It didn't take long before the cracks began to show. My son, the man who once looked me in the eye and told me I was too old, too slow, too much of a burden, was suddenly a shadow of himself inside my house. My house, the one that no longer gave him comfort. At first it was subtle. I saw it in the way he checked over his shoulder before entering a room, the way his hands trembled when he turned the lock on the front door, the way he paused before flicking off the lights, as though expecting something to leap from the dark. He tried to act normal, even laughed at himself once or twice when he thought no one was watching. But fear has a way of seeping into your bones, making everything heavier. I was methodical. I never gave him enough to prove, just enough to doubt himself. A drawer left open when he swore he closed it. The television flicking on at 3 a.m. to static, even though no one had touched the remote. His shoes moved from the door to the hallway. Once I left the faintest trace of perfume, my perfume, on his pillow. He woke up with the scent in his nose, that familiar smell of lavender I had worn all through his childhood. I knew it cut deeper than any scream could. The neighbors began to notice too. One told him she saw a woman in the window late at night, sitting in the rocking chair. Another swore she heard singing, my voice, the lullaby I used to hum when he was small. Of course, he laughed it off in the daylight, muttering about overactive imaginations. But in the dark, I could see the terror in his eyes. He was starting to believe what he had always feared, that you cannot bury a mother's presence, not even by shoving her into a nursing home. I wanted him unsettled but not broken, at least not yet. The real breaking had to come slowly, like peeling layers off an onion, until he had nowhere left to run. So I escalated just a little more. One evening while he was gone, I rearranged the furniture back to the way I had kept it. Every chair, every table, every picture frame returned to its rightful place. When he came home, I imagined the air must have felt thick, the walls pressing in on him with memory. My fingerprints were everywhere, even if he couldn't see them. By the end of that week, he wasn't sleeping. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice sharp and frayed. He snapped at neighbors, barked at deliverymen, slammed doors when no one was around. He was unraveling, and he didn't even know the full extent of my plan yet. I had given him fear. Soon I would give him guilt, the kind that eats you alive, that twists every memory of love into a knife. Because fear fades, but guilt lingers forever. Fear had hollowed him out, but fear alone wasn't enough. Fear fades with time. People can learn to live with it, even numb themselves to it. But guilt was different. Guilt dug its claws into the soul and never let go. And I knew exactly which wounds to reopen in him. One afternoon, while he was away at work, I slipped into the house again. The sun streamed through the windows, casting the same golden light I remembered from years ago, when he would sit at the kitchen table doing his homework while I cooked dinner. That memory nearly softened me. But then I remembered the way he had looked at me before leaving me at the nursing home. Like I was an old piece of furniture he no longer needed. The softness died. I went to the attic, where I had kept boxes of his childhood things. He had pushed them aside, covered them in dust, as if trying to bury the past along with me. I opened one and pulled out his old teddy bear, frayed at the edges, one button eye missing but still intact. That bear had been his comfort through every fever, every nightmare, every stormy night. I placed it gently on his bed, propped upright, as if waiting for him. That night he came home late. I watched from the shadows as he entered the bedroom and froze. His body stiffened, his breathing hitched. He stared at that teddy bear for a long time before slowly picking it up. I saw the way his hand trembled, the way his face shifted between anger and something deeper, something raw. He dropped it on the floor as though it had burned him. The next day, I left a different memory. A folded drawing, one he had made when he was 5 years old, scribbles of a stick figure, mom holding hands. With a stick figure boy, with the words "me plus mom, forever," written in crooked letters. I put it on the kitchen counter where he couldn't miss it. When he saw it, he didn't throw it away. He didn't shout. He just stood there, staring at it, his shoulders slumping. I could almost hear the echo of his younger self in his mind. The boy who once believed his mother was his whole world. Over the next week, I continued. His report card from 2nd grade, where he had written, "I love you, Mom," at the top. The photo of us at the park, where I was pushing him on the swings. Both of us smiling like the world was perfect. One by one, I returned these fragments of the past, laying them like stepping stones to a truth he couldn't escape. He hadn't just abandoned an old woman. He had betrayed the woman who had built his entire life. I saw the guilt begin to seep into him. He stopped inviting friends over. He stopped answering phone calls. He sat alone in the living room at night, staring into the dark, clutching that teddy bear like it was the only thing keeping him together. Good. Let him feel the weight of every sacrifice I made, every sleepless night, every tear shed for his sake. Fear had kept him awake. But guilt was beginning to break him. By now, the house had become his prison. I didn't need to lock the doors or bar the windows. His own mind kept him trapped. He hardly left except for work, and even then, he rushed back like a man afraid the walls would shift while he was gone. The guilt I had planted in him had taken root, twisting every memory into a blade. I saw it in his face when he looked in the mirror, His reflection had grown gaunt, eyes sunken, hair unkempt. He was restless, pacing through rooms as if searching for proof that what he felt wasn't real. But it was real. I made sure of that. The night before my confrontation, I prepared the house itself. I went to the old cabinet where I kept my photo albums. He had shoved them away, hidden them like relics of a past he wanted to forget. I pulled them out and scattered them around the living room, on the couch, the coffee table, the floor. Pages opened to pictures of me holding him as a baby, walking him to school, standing proud at his graduation. Every image a reminder. I had been there, always there, even when no one else was. Then I chose one photograph for the final touch. It was taken the day he moved into that very house after college. Standing in the doorway with me by his side. My arm was around his shoulder, his smile wide. Back then, he had called it our home. I taped that photo to the front door, so it would be the first thing he saw when he returned. That night, I hid in the hallway waiting. When he stepped inside and saw the photos everywhere, he froze. His breathing grew ragged, his hands shaking as he picked one up, then another. I watched his face as the weight of memory crashed over him. He muttered to himself, "No, this isn't real." But it was, and he knew it. For the first time, I saw regret flash in his eyes. Not just fear, not just confusion, but true regret. He sat on the couch surrounded by our past and buried his face in his hands. His shoulders trembled. For a moment I almost pitied him. Almost. But pity was not why I was here. That night, as he slept fitfully in the bedroom, I whispered through the silence, "You should have never underestimated me." He stirred, half waking, but too tired to rise. I left the teddy bear in his arms, the same one he had clutched as a boy. He hugged it unconsciously, a grown man reduced to the frightened child he once was. The time for shadows was ending. The time for silence was done. I had made him afraid. I had made him guilty. But now it was time for him to face me, not as the frail old woman he had cast aside, but as the mother he could never erase. Tomorrow night he would see me. The house was silent, but not the silence of peace, the silence of tension, of breath held too long. He was asleep in the bedroom, though I doubted he truly rested anymore. His nights were restless, filled with tossing, turning, and muttered words. Fear and guilt had worn him thin. Tonight I would peel away what was left. I stepped into the bedroom quietly, the key still warm in my hand. The moonlight spilled through the curtains, painting the room in silver. He lay there on the bed, the teddy bear clutched to his chest like a child hiding from the dark. My heart twisted for a moment, remembering the boy he used to be, the boy who ran into my arms, not away from them. But then I remembered the man he had become, the man who shoved me aside like yesterday's trash, and the tenderness burned away. I stood over him, letting my shadow fall across his face. His eyes flickered open, groggy at first, then sharp with terror when he saw me. He scrambled upright, pressing his back against the headboard. No, this isn't real. You're not—" "I'm very real," I cut in, my voice calm, steady. "More real than the lies you've been telling yourself." He shook his head violently, his hands gripping the sheets. "You're supposed to be in a nursing home?" I finished for him. Out of sight? Out of mind? Forgotten? I leaned closer, my eyes locked on his. "That's what you wanted, wasn't it? To live in this house as if I were already dead." His lips parted, but no words came. He looked smaller somehow, cornered. "You thought I was too old. Too weak, too slow," I continued, my voice low but firm. "You thought you could take everything I built and claim it as yours. But you forgot who I am. I am the woman who carried you, who fed you, who broke her body so you could stand tall. And you betrayed me." Tears welled in his eyes, though he tried to blink them away. I didn't mean—" "Didn't mean?" I laughed softly, the sound sharp in the stillness. "You drove me to a place where people go to die. You moved into my house, my life, without a second thought. You meant every word, every action. And now you will feel the weight of it." He dropped his gaze, his shoulders trembling. For the first time, he wasn't defensive, wasn't angry. He was broken. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice hoarse. "I didn't know. I didn't think—" "No," I said, straightening. "You didn't think. And that's why you'll remember this. Every time you walk through these halls, you'll feel me. Every creak of the floor, every shift of the air, it will be me. You will never escape what you did." He buried his face in his hands, sobbing quietly. I turned away, leaving him with his tears. My revenge was not his death, nor his suffering, it was his memory. He would live, but he would live haunted. And that, I decided, was justice. I left his bedroom that night without another word. The house was mine again, not because I lived there, but because my presence had rooted itself into every wall, every shadow, every breath he took inside it. My revenge wasn't about reclaiming the bricks and wood. It was about reclaiming my place in his mind. And I had done it. From that night forward, he was never the same. I watched from the corners, unseen but always felt. He jumped at the creak of the stairs, paused before entering darkened rooms, and left lights burning through the night. He no longer invited friends over. The house was too heavy with memory, too thick with guilt. The once proud man who had shoved me into a nursing home now lived like a prisoner in the very place he had stolen. Neighbors whispered about him. They said he looked pale, drawn like he hadn't slept in weeks. They said he muttered to himself when he thought no one was around, that sometimes he stood at the window with tears in his eyes, staring into nothing. One even swore she heard him calling out "Mom" in the middle of the night, like a frightened child. And maybe that's what he had become again, a child. A child who finally understood what it meant to need his mother. But I was no longer the soft comfort he remembered. I was the reminder of his betrayal, the living shadow of the woman he had cast aside. Did I forgive him? No. Forgiveness is for those who repent before it's too late. He hadn't sought forgiveness when he shoved me away. He had sought convenience, and now convenience was gone. I didn't torment him endlessly. That wasn't the point. I didn't want him to collapse completely, to lose himself so fully that he became empty. No, what I wanted was worse. I wanted him to live, to wake each morning, sit in that kitchen, and remember that it was my hands that built his world. To lay his head down each night, clutching that old teddy bear, and feel the sting of regret in every heartbeat. As for me, I found a strange kind of peace. I returned to the nursing home when I wished, still playing the role of the quiet old woman no one noticed. But inside, I carried a fire that no one could extinguish. I was not weak. I was not finished. I was not dead. I had reminded him of that, and in doing so, reminded myself. This is not the story of a woman discarded. It is the story of a mother who refused to be erased. My son thought he had buried me. Instead, I buried him beneath the weight of his own conscience. And so, every time he walks through that front door, every time the wind rattles the windows, every time the house creaks in the night, he remembers. He remembers me. He remembers what he did. And he regrets it forever.